this is the new episode. I wanted to chat today about, you know, what what I've been going through and forgiveness, the term forgiveness, because let's face it, Middle Eastern people, we don't forgive too lightly. And if you are just listening to this episode today, I've just told you that I come from a Middle Eastern background. Forgiveness and anger and how that's holding you back. Now, I'm not usually an angry person, but I think I've learned that I don't know if it's a good thing. I've learned that habit that when someone does something to me where I don't really like it, I tend to dig my heels in. I sack them. I basically take that thing, or say that person, out of my life because I feel as though for me to move on, I need to be able to sever that connection. Now, it's not always a healthy habit because I don't know if you realize, but from my tone, when you're unhappy with the situation and you don't deal with it and you cut it off, it's like you don't have any closure. So I always bring my life experience and, trials and tribulations, as they say, into my work, into my podcast, because I want to keep it real. Like, there's a lot of trainers out there who portray this super squeaky clean diet lifestyle, zen life, when in reality it's not. People are breaking down, especially with the current climate. um that could have gone a really bad way, that word. But COVID Delta strain in Sydney, it's gone a bit hectic. People are over it. People are protesting. A lot of people aren't working. Businesses are closed. It's really sad. So, how can you forgive in this state when it is your livelihood? How can you forgive? Like, forgiveness is multidimensional, and there's different ways in which you can. Like, some people, like, you don't have to be that person's best friend. And I've discovered that because through my own kind of challenges of trying to forgive, um I've had to go deep and do some research. Like, I downloaded a podcast about forgiveness. Seriously. I listened to a book about forgiveness. And like, my little issue that occurred, it's not even a third of the size of other people's issues. But in saying that, I don't want to devalue the problem that I have. And that's one of the most important things, is everybody has their own little roadblocks and issues that come up. It doesn't mean it's less of an issue than someone who has to forgive, a random person who's killed their child. So that's obviously huge, but it's not going to devalue. There's not a scale to go, oh, right, 0 to 100, you're about number 5, so that doesn't really matter. So, yeah, like, as I was listening and researching about forgiveness, I realized I had to sit down and think, like, why do I need to forgive? Because I was so angry at this person that did this to me. I was like, how can this even happen after all I've done? And it got me looking at the 12 steps of recovery because that's what it felt like. I had to start with, like, after many years of denial. It wasn't many years, it was like maybe a few weeks. I had to be honest with myself, and that's the simple admission that, you know that this happened and there's a reason why it happened, even if it was a really close loved one or someone who I just met. That's the first step of Alcohol Anonymous. The principles that you can apply are just absolutely mind boggling, but definitely relatable. So I had to sit there and be like, stop being in denial. It's not always about you. There's a reason behind it. Okay. Second one here I've got in the 12 steps of Alcoholic Anonymous or rehab is faith. Before a high power can begin to operate, you must believe that it can. So someone with an addiction accepts that there's a higher power to help them heal. So there has to be something more than you just forgiving that person. Like there has to be a bit of a reason behind it. The other bit is surrender. You can be really self-destructive. And in terms of forgiveness, you can start to hate that person, which I did, and it starts to consume your life, your thoughts. It's like, why did they do that? How can they do that? Again, going through the same thing. So you almost have to surrender and just go, you know what? That's their problem. It happened. That's the next step. I need to move on. The soul searching is the next step. There's integrity. Step 5, it provides great opportunity for growth. There's acceptance, there's willingness, humility, and forgiveness. The actual forgiveness is actually further down the 12 steps of rehab. Further down. So it's like, do you know how much work I had to do to get to the forgiveness part? And as I said, when you forgive someone, it doesn't mean that you're going to be their best friend. I've learned that. It doesn't mean, but forgiving someone for something they've done almost relinquishes the power you have given them or the situation. I'm going to say that again. Forgiving someone relinquishes the power you have given that situation or given them. Now, how do you forgive someone? Well, it takes time. It takes a lot of effort working on yourself. And sometimes when you want to forgive someone, you think you've forgiven them, but then there's this trigger and you have this brain explosion of anger. And it's just like the worst scene in your head. It is the worst scene in your head, and you realize that you haven't actually forgiven them. And then you need to go back and do work on yourself. And that's where the next step comes from. It says maintenance. So you kind of always have to go back and catch yourself, because it could be really destructive. And again, this day and age, we don't need to add things to our lives that are destructive. Don't need to. It's hard already. It is difficult already. I mean, I see it on social media. Like, I don't want to be, thank God I'm not a kid during this social media age, because people are ruthless. Like, I've seen people in a area page, like if you live in a specific area and you're on a Facebook page, the adults are ruthless. Like the comments, like, is that seriously necessary to write that comment? Like, some lady was walking in the park and then she had to put a post up about how a dog came up to another lady and it pissed her off. It's like, do you really need to bully someone kind of on the internet? So if this adult is bullying, imagine the kids, imagine the magnitude of bullying. So we got to step back here, step back and be really aware of what we're doing, because this could be really detrimental to not only your mental health, but your physical health. Forgiveness takes time and definitely takes willingness. Like, I'll tell you how I went through the process of forgiveness. Okay, so something happened. I kind of ignored it. It went on for a while. By the way, don't give any money to family or friends. That's the worst thing you could ever do. I'm not saying that I did that. I'm just saying it's a bad idea. So it happened a while ago. Everybody had really good intentions, and then this person dropped off the radar. Trying to contact them for quite some time, nothing. And then they were very evasive or very aggressive. I was like, oh my goodness, like, how can they do that? I was in denial about the whole process. But, I don't know what was going on in their lives. I have a very supportive framework and family, and I don't know what was going on. Not saying that was the right thing that they did. So for me to go through that whole process of denial, that anger, that faith, the soul searching, the acceptance, the humility, some willingness. I had to be willing to do the work, doing the research. I thought, like, who the hell researches how to forgive someone? Because you know what? It was keeping me up at night and I needed closure. So I had to do the groundwork, going through that and coming back and forth, thinking like, you know what? I have forgiven that person, but then something coming up. So it was a constant up and down battle. And how did I get through it? Well, I did like something, I used to do when I was 9. I wrote a Dear Diary letter because that person didn't want to contact me or blocking my calls. That's another thing. That's just like, that killed me. And if you're listening to me now, it did. It worked. I felt like, I was a crazy ex trying to get in contact with an ex, which is not the case, but that's what I felt like. Like, I was trying to get in contact with that person and they wouldn't. And I was like, can somebody hear me? And I guess all I wanted to be was heard, and nobody heard me. So instead of writing a physical Dear Diary letter, I wrote an email. I love this. I wrote an email, a Dear Diary email, but to that person. I put on some Tchaikovsky. Oh my goodness, was it emotional? And if I tell you the amount of pressure and the amount of tears that flowed down my face and out of my soul, it was like this burden just lifted off me. Oh my goodness, the burden of the pressure, of the effort, of the years put into this relationship, and then the outcome. It was just, it's going to sound hippie. It was absolutely freeing. And I would definitely recommend it if you cannot speak to a person, or if they refuse to speak to you and get some closure. Write a letter, write an email, and hit send. Because once I hit send, I felt like a completely different person. All those nights that, I'd sit and think and be like, why are they doing this? Why? I was like, well, I'm never going to know why. And they're probably never going to talk to you. Maybe now, maybe they'll never, well, definitely will be crossing paths. I'll tell you that. That's what happens when you live close, if you know what I mean. But I felt completely better. And I felt like, I was on this road to recovery. And the most important thing, I let it go. I let that pressure go. And, the ball just left. It's not in his court. It was just gone. And not only did I feel better, I started to function better. I started to focus on myself. It wasn't consuming my brain. So ultimately, for me, it was about letting go and letting go of the thoughts and not letting it consume me. You win some, you lose some. That person was there in your life for a specific reason. And, maybe I'm hoping I'll never make that mistake again, because that was a painful, emotional mistake. Even though I was ghosted by this person, I was blocked. And I used to ask myself, how do you forgive a person who doesn't ask for it? Exactly. How do you forgive a person? Because people don't want your forgiveness. They're that angry, or they don't think they've done anything wrong. And these are the things that circulated my mind throughout that forgiveness process. When someone doesn't even want to make contact with you, is number one, try and understand their perspective. There's always another perspective. It's like the age-old saying, when someone has a car accident, there's your version, there's their version, and there's the truth. There's always, their perspective. And, I try and put myself in those shoes. That was really hard. They're really hard to put my feet in those shoes. But that made me move on to the next step, which was write a dear diary letter. Dear diary. and email it or send it to that person and put it to rest. Like actually bury it. Done, dusted. Thank you very much. Close the curtains and move on. Because I feel like a lot of the times, or when we get sick, all right, it's diseases and things like that, but stress is a big factor in illness. Like when your body is stressed, your heart rate goes up, you're sweating, blood pressure, like it's not good. You can't sleep, your appetite's suppressed. It's not a good thing to be stressed all the time. Obviously, we need stress in our lives because if we don't have any form of stress, we can't get up in the morning, we can't run when there's a car, you know, we need to have that in our lives. Number 3, you don't have to be best friends. So if you forgive someone, you don't have to be their best friends. People don't need to be in your life. And I seem to always be repeating things today. People don't have to be in your life. They don't. That's it. Done, dusted. And then the last one is move on, move forward. And that's my little journey of forgiveness, from the whole denial aspect to realizing it's like the 12 steps of Alcoholic Anonymous recovery, to having formulated my little dear diary, to reading, to getting to doing some research on different types of forgiveness and putting it to rest and knowing that life will move on. You've done the best that you can and you wish them nothing but best. Good luck to you, because you're never going to get this thing again. You're never going to be in this area, in this energy force, because it hurts too much. The time is done. And that's it. You've wasted your chance. But that's my little wrap up on forgiveness and anger. How is it holding you back? Do you need to do a dear diary? Do you need to forgive someone to move on and be the best version of yourself? It is possible. It takes a lot of time. It is frustrating and you will definitely be tested. But I guarantee you, when you let it go, you will definitely be happier. That's my little podcast today. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And if you think that someone needs to hear this, please send it to them. My name is Sally. Have a great day.